Hello students, welcome to this online course of Water Resource Engineering. So in the previous lecture we have seen the Bleak-Scrape theory and the little modification of Lane's theory. But this theory was not very rational, and to counter this flaws, Khosla came up with his new theory. Okay, so now we are going to see the Khosla's theory for subsurface structure design, or Khosla theories of seepage, or Khosla's seepage theory, and he took the help of flow nets. So he used the concept of flow nets for validating his theory. So why this theory came up? Because many of the important hydraulic structures such as weirs and barrages, which were designed on the basis of Bleak's theory between the period of 1910 to 1925. So in between these this duration, many of the barrages and weirs were designed on the basis of Bleak's theory. Fine. In 1926 to 1927, this 1 year, the upper Chenab Canal siphons designed on Bleak's theory started posing undermining troubles. So this upper Chenab Canal were posing some problems. So what happened? To just check the problem, investigation started, which ultimately leads to the Khosla theory. So Khosla find out the flaws in the Bleak's theory, and he proposes new theory, which was known as Khosla's theory after his name. So what were the main principles? The main principle of this theory are summarized below. So the first thing what he proposed, that the seeping water does not creep along the bottom contour of Pakka floor as stated by Bleak. So this was the core idea of Bleak. He told, like, he has derived all these formulas on the basis of this principle only, that the water is flowing along the lower contour. But Khosla is telling it is nothing like that. What he told? He told that this water moves along the set of streamlines. So water is flowing along a set of streamline, not along the bottom contour of the Pakka floor. So this was the basic difference. So he tried to express this flow. How? With the help of flow nets. So this steady seepage in a vertical plane for a homogeneous soil can be expressed by Laplacian equation. So you might be knowing this very common equation, which is Laplace equation. So what is this equation? Del square phi upon del x square plus del square phi upon del z square should be 0. So the derivative of the function, any function with respect to two perpendicular axes, if the sum is 0, that second derivative is 0, then that function will be termed as that this function is following the Laplace equation. So here phi is the flow potential, which is equal to the k times h. H is the head, k is the coefficient of permeability of the soil. Okay, so h is residual head at the point. Now the above equation represents two sets of curve, because this is a second order equation, del square phi dx square plus del square phi divided by dz square is equal to 0. So there will be two sets of equations, which were these two equations will be intersecting each other orthogonally. So the angle between the two sets will be 90 degree. One set of the line is called as streamlines, and the other set of lines is called as equipotential line. So these are the terms you must be learning in your fluid mechanics in detail. So here I am. So you must have learned this in your fluid mechanics, that is what is streamline and what is equipotential line. Equipotential line is nothing but the line having equal potential. What is the name? Equipotential. So potential which is equal on this line. So the resultant flow diagram showing both the set of curve is called as flow net. Flownet also you might have learned. This you can refer to the fluid kinematics portion, just to revise this. Now what are streamlines? The streamlines represent the path along which the water flows through the subsoil. Okay, so every particle entering the soil at a given point upstream of the structure, upstream because water will start entering from upstream only, will trace out its own path and will represent a streamline. So water will follow the streamline for during its flow. The first streamline follows the bottom contour of the structure. So instead of telling that the water is flowing along the contour only, he told that the first streamline follows the bottom contour of the streamline and is the same as the Bleek's path of creep. So this was the Bleek's explanation for the water path. The remaining streamlines follows smooth curves transitioning slowly from the outline of the foundation to the semi-ellipse. So this I will show you. So let us say this is some weir or some barrage. So this is the bottom. So streamline, as you can see, this is the network of two sets of lines. One is streamline, so the water is flowing along this, so this is streamline, and the perpendicular, the second set which is perpendicular to this set will be termed as equipotential line. So this is the flow beneath the structure. So this is the explanatory diagram for Kosla's flow net. So here it is H, these are various heights. So this is just a representation. Now the second point, what he told or what he proposed, that the seepage water exerts a force at each point in the direction of flow and tangential to the streamline. So this is just, we can say this is streamline. So what he told that this is a force which will be tangential to the streamline. At every point this is acting, it is acting everywhere. So this force, which is Fs, has an upward component from the point where the streamline turns upward. So till here this will be having the downward slope, downward direction, but the moment the streamlines are becoming upward, so this will have a perpendicular upward component. For soil grains to remain stable, the upward component of this force should be counterbalanced by the submerged weight of the soil. So here you can see this, the weight of the soil particles is acting downwards. So for this particle to remain stable, what is the equilibrium condition? The perpendicular component or the vertical component along this weight should be counterbalancing this weight, that too with the submerged weight, because these particles are under submerged condition. So this force has the maximum disturbing tendency at the exit end. So you can see here that this here all the force is acting in perpendicular upward direction. So here full component is acting. Here you can say the Fs will have some component, but here it is having the maximum component. So it is obvious that it will produce maximum disturbance at the exit only, because the direction of this force is vertically upward and hence full force acts in the upward component. Now for the soil grains to remain stable, the submerged weight of soil grain should be more than this upward disturbing force, which is obvious for the soil particles to remain in the stable condition. Now the disturbing force at any point is proportional to the gradient of pressure of water at that point. So force will be proportional to the pressure gradient. This gradient of pressure of water at the exit end is called the exit gradient. So this is if the soil particle is safe under this gradient, the soil particle will remain under any of the gradient, because this is the maximum disturbing gradient possible. So we have to check the safety of the soil particles for this gradient only. In order that the soil particles at exit remain stable, the upward pressure at exit should be safe. In other words, the exit gradient should be safe. Okay, because this force is directly proportional to the gradient. If we are checking for gradient, then it will be safe in the under force. Now, how Khosla proposed the exit gradient, critical exit gradient and safe exit gradient. Let us see what are these. The exit gradient is said to be critical when the upward disturbing force on the grain is just equal to the submerged weight of the grain at the exit. When the two forces are balancing each other, just on the verge of balancing each other, then the gradient will be termed as critical, because at this gradient only the instability is starting. When a factor of safety equal to 4 or 5 is used, so you can see how uncertain we are for this design, because we are using a 4 to 5 factor of safety. The more factor of safety indicates that we are not confident in our theory. So the proposed theory still needs so much improvement, because this much factor of safety means that we are wasting so much of our material and money. So this is different part. So when a factor of safety equal to 4 or 5 is used, the exit gradient can be taken as a safe exit gradient. So at this very high factor of safety, if we are applying to the gradient, then we can say that our structure is safe, and for that the gradient can be termed as the safe exit gradient. In other words, an exit gradient equal to 1 by 4 to 1 by 5 of the critical exit gradient is ensured, so as to keep the structure safe against piping. So piping, you can refer to the first chapter of your fluid mechanics. There you will be seeing, if you want to go in detail, else I have covered this in the previous lecture itself. Now let us see how numerically we can calculate these terms. The submerged weight of a unit volume of soil can be given as Ws. This, up till now you might have derived this equation. So this is the submerged unit weight, which is gamma W 1 minus n g minus 1. The first unit of soil mechanics is very important, so you can directly see this result, how it is coming from there. Gamma W is unit weight of water, G is specific gravity of soil, N is porosity of the soil mass. This equation can be written in the form of void ratio also. So 1 minus n is equal to 1 upon 1 plus E. So this can be written as gamma W G minus 1 upon 1 plus E, if it is written as in the form of E. For critical condition to occur at the exit point, what is the condition? F should be equal to Ws. What is F? It is the upward disturbing force on the grain. But this force is proportional to the pressure gradient, that is pressure gradient at that point is, so pressure gradient with respect to the space, so dP by dl, or gamma W dH by dl. How? Because P is rho gamma into H, so gamma is constant, so we can take it outside a differential. So what is this? dH by dl is represent the rate of loss of head, or the gradient at the exitant. So this can be, we can say this is the exit gradient. Now these two must be same for critical gradient. So you can say gamma W, equating this gamma W you will get cancel. So the critical gradient, this you can say I critical. I critical is G minus 1 multiplied by 1 minus n. So you can see this is depending on the soil property only. G is the soil property, N is also the soil property. So for a given soil, I critical will be constant. Now under critical conditions, the critical exit gradient is equal to this for most of the rivers, and G is 2.65 and N is 0.4. This means I critical, which is IC, is 0.99. Just put these values here. You will get I critical as 1. Hence an exit gradient of equal to 1 by 4 to 1 by 5. As I have told, we have to apply the factor of safety to the critical gradient, means that the exit gradient equal to 1.4 to 1.5 has to be provided, because critical is 1. So the safe will be 0.2 to 0.25 has to be provided for keeping the structure safe against piping. So these are some values of safe gradient depending upon the soil. So if soil is single type, 1 by 4 to 1 by 5, coarse sand is 1 by 5 to 1 by 6, fine sand is 1 by 6 to 1 by 7. So you can see as the soil is becoming finer, I critical is becoming less. So finer particles are more prone to exit gradient failure. Now, Khosla's theory of flow nets made it very clear that the loss of head does not take place uniformly in direct proportion to the creep length as stated by Bleek. So this is the first difference. So what Bleek told that the exit, so he told that the loss of head is directly proportional to the length of creep. In fact, it depends upon the whole geometry of the figure, that is the shape of foundation, depth of impervious boundary and level of upstream and downstream bed, because on these parameters only the flow net is depending. So ultimately this is depending on the flow net, and flow net is depending upon the geometry, foundation type and the water level at upstream and downstream bed. When the equipotential lines are traced to be closer, the rate of loss of head will definitely be quicker and vice versa. So equipotential line are close, so rate will be fast. It can hence be concluded that the safety against piping cannot be obtained by providing sufficient floor length as stated by Bleek. So by just providing a long length we cannot provide safety against piping, but it can be obtained by keeping the exit gradient well below the critical value. But if we are keeping the exit gradient well below the critical value, then we can say that the structure is safe. The safety can be ensured. The exit gradient may not be safe even if the average hydraulic gradient of Bleek is safe. So this was observed by Khosla. Now the third point is the undermining of the floor started from the downstream end of the downstream pucca floor, and if not checked it travels upstream toward the weir wall. So undermining, instead of becoming progressing to downstream end, it can move towards the upstream end also if not checked properly. The undermining or piping starts only when the exit gradient is unsafe for the subsoil on which the weir is founded. So if the soil under the structure is not safe, then only undermining will start. It is therefore absolutely necessary to have a reasonably deep vertical cut off at the downstream end of the pucca floor to prevent the undermining. So we have to provide a very long path to the water at the exit, so that the head loss or the gradient can be reduced and it can be ensured that it is well below the critical value. The depth of this downstream vertical cutoff is governed by two considerations. How we are going to do this? By checking maximum depth of score and safe exit gradient, which is obvious. While designing a weir, downstream cutoff from the maximum score depth consideration is first of all provided and checked for exit gradient. So after providing this the maximum score depth condition, we have to check for safe exit gradient again. So this is the most important parameter for designing as per Khosla. If a safe value of exit gradient is not obtained, then the depth of cutoff is increased. So finally we have to depending on safe exit gradient. If we are not able to provide it, then we have to change and we have to recheck for safe exit gradient. Now the depth of cutoff is cutoff. I hope you are understanding that cutoff means the cutoff for piles which we are going to dig into the soil. So the depth of cutoff is also governed and limited by practical considerations, as the construction of a very deep cutoff may be difficult or unpractical at the site. So we have to keep the economy also in the mind, and we have to check the feasibility of the construction, because it is nothing like we are providing 100 meters of cutoff. So we have to be very reasonable and practical while doing so. Now a weir or a barrage may fail not only due to seepage as stated by Bleek, but may also fail due to surface flow. So it is nothing like only subsurface forces are responsible for the failure. It can fail due to surface flow also. Now the surface flow, that is when flood water flows over the weir crest, may cause core dynamic action, and in addition will cause uplift pressures in the jump trough if the hydraulic jump forms on the downstream. So along with subsurface failure, these factors also can be a reason for the failure of the our barrage or a weir. These uplift pressure must be investigated for various flow conditions. So what are the conditions? The maximum uplift due to this dynamic action should then be compared with the maximum uplift under steady seepage. So we have to reduce the uplift also. Now the Khosla's theory differ from Bleek's theory in all the above respect, but owing to the simplicity, Bleek's theory is still used for design of small works. So if the work is not very important to us, we can go for Bleek's theory instead of Khosla theory. Why? Because Khosla theory is very much comprehensive, that's why it is little bit complex. But Bleek's theory is very simple, and we are still using this theory. A minimum practical thickness for the floor and a deep vertical cutoff at a downstream end is, however, always provided in addition to the requirements of the Bleek's theory. So we are still using Bleek's theory, but we have to check for deep vertical cutoff, and a minimum thickness is also provided as per Khosla theory. However, on a major work, Bleek's theory should never be used, and it may lead to expensive and unsafe erroneous designs. So for very important work or very big work, we have to use Khosla theory only. Okay. Now let us see Khosla's method of independent variables for determination of pressure and exit gradient for seepage below a weir or a barrage. So now we are going to see how Khosla has given the method to calculate the pressure, that is the uplift pressure, and the exit gradient, that is the critical exit gradient for seepage below a weir or a barrage. These are the structures. In order to know as to how the seepage below the foundation of a hydraulic structure is taking place, it is necessary to plot the flow net. So first condition to apply this theory is to draw a flow net, or in other words, we must solve the Laplacian equation. Why we are saying these are equal? Because the flow net is coming from it is a solution of the Laplace equation only. This can be accomplished either by mathematical solution of the Laplace equation, or by electrical analogy method, or by graphical sketching by adjusting the streamlines and equipotential lines with respect to the boundary condition. So this is very tedious task if you are going to do it manually. So nowadays we prefer the softwares. So we have to do nothing, just we have to input the heads, the various boundary conditions, and the computer will plot the flow net for you. So these are complicated method and are time consuming. Therefore, for designing hydraulic structure such as weir or barrage on a pervious foundation, Khosla has evolved a simple, quick and an accurate approach called the method of independent variable. So as I have told you, these are very complicated and very tedious tasks. So let us see what Khosla had done to reduce this complexity, and how it is a very easy method, which is method of independent variables. So in this method of independent variables, a complex profile like that of a weir is broken into a number of simple profiles, each of which can be solved mathematically. So he has said that if you are having a very complex structure, try to divide that structure into a very small parts, and which are simple structures that can be easily solved mathematically. Mathematical solution of flow nets for these simple standard profiles have been presented in the form of equation and curves, which can be used for determining the percentage pressure at the various key points. So what Khosla has done, he has himself provided the provided the solution for these small parts. So he has provided the equation and curve. There is a graph. You can directly go to that graph with your parameters. You can search and directly get the pressure and exit gradient value. Now the simple profiles which are most useful are, first is the straight horizontal floor, negligible thickness, the sheet pile on the upstream end or at the downstream end. So sheet pile can be at the upstream end or it can be at the downstream end. So these are B and D. This is width and this is depth. This is B, this is depth. So this is first type of profile. Second is a straight horizontal floor depressed below the bed. So this is bed and this is depressed by a depth D without any vertical cutoff. So here we are not providing any piles, here we are not providing any cutoff, vertical cutoff, you can see. Third is a straight horizontal floor of negligible thickness with a sheet pile line at the some intermediate point. So first was either upstream or downstream. Second is there is no sheet pile at all, and third is a sheet pile anywhere between upstream and downstream. This is upstream, this is downstream. So you can divide your structure into these three types of simple structures, because for these structures Khosla has directly given formulas and curves, so there is no need to solve them mathematically again and again. So the key points are the junctions. What are the key points? As in the first point it was told that we have to check the pressure and exit gradient at key points. So what are the key points? The key points are the junctions of the floor and the pile lines on the either side. So let me show you. So this is a junction. So this side and this side both are the key points. Here this point is key points. This is the junction point. So these are the key points and pile lines on either sides, and the bottom point of the pile line and the bottom corner of the, in the case of the depressed floor. So in this key points are this, because junction, this is bottom, this is junction, this is bottom. So these are key points and corners of the depressed floor. If floor is depressed, so these will be the key points. So in this way we have to solve the problems. The percentage pressure at these key points for the simple forms into which the complex profile has been broken is varied for a complex profile itself if corrected for. So Khosla has given the corrections also, few corrections also. What are these corrections? Correction for the mutual interference of piles. If there are more than two piles, more than one piles, though their influence will come to one another. So we have to check the interference. Correction for thickness of the floor, correction for the slope of the floor. So let us see what is the first correction. Correction for mutual interference of the piles. So he has given this formula directly, that is 19 root over d by b dash multiplied by d plus d by b. This is correct. This correction is applied to, this is coming due to head effect. Okay, because different piles are having different heads, they are subject to different heads. So what are these values? B dash is the distance between two piles, you can directly calculate. Capital D is the depth of the pile line, the influence of which has to be determined. So the pile under consideration, that pile's depth is capital D. So D is measured below the level at which the interference is desired. So from the point of interference which we want to see, we have to calculate the value of D. Small d is the depth of the pile on which the effect is considered. So if it is calculated at the floor level only, then these two will become same. B is total floor length. This correction is positive for the points in the rear or backwater, and subtractive or negative for the points forward in the direction of flow. So if you are moving in the direction of flow. So for backward points, if this is the flow, so for backward points it will be positive, for forward points it will be negative. This equation does not apply to the effect of an outer pile or an intermediate pile if the intermediate pile is equal to or smaller than the outer pile and is at a distance less than twice the length of the outer pile. So if it is not applicable to the end pile and of the intermediate pile, if provided both are having the same depth. Clear? I hope it is clear, because this is very straightforward. Now suppose we are considering, let us see how we are going to check. So this is some structure, these are some points, these are, so suppose we are considering the influence of pile 2. Pile 2 effects on pile 1. So we are considering this pile's effect on this pile, interference, for correcting the pressure at C1. So this is the point of consideration. We want to correct the pressure here. Since the point C1 is in the rear, so we want to see this pile's effect here. So this is backward, so the correction will be positive, while the correction to be applied to E2 to pile 1 shall be negative. Okay, because this is the same only. Now at point C, due to this pile it is positive. At point E2, due to this pile it will be negative, because it is ahead in the direction of flow. Similarly, you can check this. Now the correction for thickness of the floor. In the standard form profiles, the floor is assumed to have negligible thickness. Hence, the percentage pressure calculated by Cauchy's equation shall pertain to top level of the floor. Okay, so the depth we are calculating, the thickness, it is with respect to the top of the floor, while the actual junction point E and C are the bottom of the floor. So we have calculated with respect to this point, but actually it is here. Hence the pressure at the actual point are calculated by assuming a straight line pressure variation. So what this is saying, let us see, this is any structure. So whatever we are calculating is from this point onwards, but actually the point is this. So we have to correct the pressure from the actual pressure. We have to check the actual pressure here, but we are calculating here, so we have to correct it by assuming a linear variation of pressure. Since the corrected pressure at E1 should be less than the calculated pressure at E1 dash, the correction this will be the here the pressure will be more. The correction to be applied for point E1 shall be negative. Why? Because this is having more pressure. Similarly, the pressure calculated at this point is retained for point C1. Now the last is correction for the slope of the floor. A correction is applied for a sloping floor and is taken as positive for downward slope and negative for the upward slope following the direction of flow. If we are checking if the slope is downward towards the flow, it will be negative, correction will be negative. If the slope is upward in the direction of flow, like this, flow is like this, it is positive. If it is downward and flow is like this, it is negative. Now the values of correction of standard slope, such as if slope is 1:1, 2:1, 3:1, you can check. So if slope is 1:1, correction factor C3 will be 11.2, 2:1, 6.5. Similarly, you can see. So you can see as slope is increasing, factor is decreasing. The correction factor given below is to be multiplied by the horizontal length of the slope and divided by the distance between the two pile lines between which the sloping floor is located. If the slope if the floor is like this is slope, this is flow direction, so for this it will be negative. So we have to apply between these two piles. So we have to check the dimension of between these piles only. Okay. This correction is applicable only to the key points of the pi line fixed at the start or end of the slope, as I have told you. Now, what is the exit gradient as per Gauss law? It has been determined that for a standard form consisting of a floor length B with a vertical cutoff depth D, the exit gradient at its downstream end is given by like this. G is h by D multiplied by 1 divided by pi root delta. What is delta? Delta is 1 plus root over 1 plus alpha square by 2, and alpha is b by t. This is standard equation given by, for standard forms given by Gauss law. The uplift pressure must be kept as low as possible, consistent with the safety at the exit, so as to keep the floor thickness to a minimum, because floor thickness is coming from pressure, so we have to take the pressure minimum, but we cannot go very less, because then it will lead to failure. It is obvious that if D is 0, so here if D is 0, then it will become infinity. So we can see that it is not possible to provide a zero depth. That means we have to provide some vertical cutoff at the downstream end must be provided. Okay. So this is all for this unit. The questions are very lengthy and it is of no relevance. You have to know the design theory only. So most important is Gauss law theory. So please make your notes, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you.